Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching Today I Found Out, and in the video today we're looking at the pivotal World War II gun that nobody wanted to put down, the plumber's nightmare. Initially designed and produced during World War II for British soldiers, the Sten was developed as a direct response to both dwindling supplies of American-made Thompson machine guns and the evacuation of Dunkirk, during which the British abandoned many thousands of guns. In an effort to rearm its troops as quickly as possible for the defence of the homeland, the British government requested that the Royal Small Arms Factory in Enfield design an alternative to the increasingly hard-to-obtain Thompson. So there's this old maxim which states, well, you can have it fast, you can have it good, or cheap. Pick two. Given the title of this video, you can probably guess which two of these were emphasized by the British government. The original design for the Sten is chiefly credited to two men, Major R.V. Shepherd and Harold Turpin, who finalized the design in the closing months of 1940. The first Sten prototype, it was reportedly of reasonably high quality for what it was. It featured a flash hider, a foregrip, as well as having wooden finishing that gave the gun a rather sleek appearance. So about 100,000 of these were produced in the summer of 1941 before the government decided to strip the already Spartan Sten down in order to save money, materials, and reduce the build time even further. Well, the result, that would be the rather creatively named Sten Mark II. Just a few months after it entered production, the Mark II became both the bane and the boon of many an Allied soldier's life. On the one hand, the Sten Mark II could be produced for less than $10, which is about $160 today, and in about 5 man-hours. In contrast, by the way, the Thompson cost $140, which is about $2,300 today to produce. Not only that, but the Sten used only two machined parts, the barrel and the bolt, with the rest being made, as a 1943 edition of Popular Science put it, from the cheapest kind of stamping. Initially, the design even used common bed springs as a main component. With the help of assembly lines, all total, an estimated 2 million Sten Mark IIs were produced during the war, and approximately 4 million total in the Sten line of guns. Due to its simplistic design, the Sten Mark II was remarkably easy to maintain and required virtually no lubrication to function properly. In fact, the construction was so simple that resistance fighters who couldn't get their hands on the genuine article even sometimes simply just made their own. Another great benefit of the Sten's jury-rigged design was that it could be easily customized to accept magazines from other guns. Indeed, you could also just whack a different type of silencer or even a different viewing sight on the thing. The ammunition for the gun was also very easy to come by, given that the Mark II was significantly designed to use the 9mm German parabellum bullets, which were the most commonly used round by various European militaries. Needless to say, they were readily available to resistance fighters in Nazi-occupied territories, particularly as the Germans started to retreat. The Mark II was also literally murder in close combat, able to fire off rounds at a rate of 500 to 550 per minute, although its clip only held 32 rounds. It was also relatively accurate up to 100 meters if one held a firm grip and used short bursts. It was also light and it was easy to conceal. Essentially, the weapon was ideal for taking out many enemy soldiers at close range, and if you surprised them, perhaps even before they'd have a chance to raise their weapons. Alright, well, all of this sounds pretty amazing so far, so what exactly was the problem with this gun? Well, if you, say, bumped the gun hard enough, or just dropped it, or even just set it down a bit too firmly, it had a tendency to fire on its own. What's worse is that it would sometimes do that in fully automatic mode. Indeed, it would unload the entire clip in a moment of self-firing frenzy. Beyond the main gun firing when soldiers didn't want it to, it was also ridiculously prone to not firing when they did want it to. This was due to an inherent flaw in the magazine's feed design, which was intentionally based on the magazines used by the German MP38. The reason they modeled it off this German gun was so that it would have various compatibilities. The problem with this design was that it used a double-column single-feed mechanism, meaning 2 columns of bullets would have to merge into one for firing, requiring an extremely precise feed angle in order to work. This is in contrast to the double-column double-feed design in the much more reliable Thompson. The former is still fine if the parts are well manufactured and sturdy, but the Sten parts were pretty much anything but that, particularly in the early going when the British British were desperate to churn out as many of the guns as possible and had little in the way of quality control. For this reason, Canadian-produced Mark IIs were noted as being much more reliable than their British equivalents. Indeed, the jamming problem was so bad that it was common for soldiers to extensively test-fire each of the Stens that they were issued before trying to use them in combat. Units that were determined to be more prone to jamming than others were simply tossed aside. But even if you had a Mark II that seemed to perform well at first, small amounts of dirt or other debris could cause the guns to jam, which was a particular problem in the muddy conditions prevalent across the European front. This problem was greatly exacerbated by the fact that the long opening that the cocking knob ran along readily allowed for such debris to enter the gun. So the most notable example of a Sten Mark II jamming at an inopportune time was in the assassination attempt of SS Obergruppenführer Reinhard Heydrich. This occurred during Operation Anthropoid on May 27, 1942. The assassins waited along Heydrich's normal daily commute, which would necessarily pass a certain bend where they knew the car would have to slow to a near stop. In a move that later resulted in Hitler calling Heydrich an idiot, Heydrich chose to drive his daily commute in an open-top Mercedes rather than in an armored car. As such, when the exposed car reached the bend in the road, one of the would-be assassins, Joseph Gabchik, pointed his Sten Mark II at Heydrich at near point-blank range. He pulled the trigger, and the Sten gun did what it was wont to do, and that would be jam. Luckily for the assassins, rather than telling him to speed off, Heydrich told his driver to stop so he could go after the attackers. While Heydrich did eventually manage a rousing chase, when the car stopped, one of the other assassins, Jan Kubisch, chucked a modified anti-tank mine at it. The resulting explosion and shrapnel severely injured Heydrich's spleen, left lung, diaphragm, and also fractured a rib. Nevertheless, bleeding profusely, he still chased his attackers for a time before becoming too weak from his injuries. Later, surgery was partially successful in that he survived at first and that his wounds began to heal, but a few days later he succumbed to infection and died. Despite its many problems, the Sten Mark II played a significant role in the Allies' early efforts in World War II, managing to put an exceptionally deadly close-range weapon in the hands of Allied fighters instead of the hunting and bolt-action rifles left over from World War I, which were all that some soldiers had to use before the Mark II. That said, the Sten's importance didn't stop soldiers from giving it colourful nicknames like the Stench Gun, the Plumber's Nightmare, and the Woolworth's Wonder. The latter name there, the Woolworth's Wonder, is named after a British retail chain which is known for selling cheap toys and gifts. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, hit that thumbs up button below, and do not forget to subscribe. We've got brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also, over there on the right, a couple of other videos that you might enjoy from the archive, so check those out. And as always, thank you for watching.